Okay, so are you ready for this?
I think so.
Because today we're diving deep into Lorenzo's predictions
Ooh.
for Venus retrograde in 2025.
I am fascinated by his work. So ready when you are.
And let me tell you, he does not hold back.
Oh, Lorenzo's definitely known for his direct style.
Yeah, like no sugarcoating at all.
No.
He actually calls this Venus retrograde a cosmic reset button,
Wow.
which I think already kind of gives you a sense of
Yeah.
what kind of energy we're dealing with here.
Big energy for sure.
Totally. And what's really fascinating is that this Venus retrograde
Yeah.
is going to be moving between two very different signs, Aries and Pisces.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that creates a really dynamic
Right.
and potentially volatile energy, I think.
Absolutely.
So-
So let's kind of break that down a bit.
Okay.
What does it mean for Venus to be retrograde?
Wow.
And how do the energies of Aries and Pisces play into that?
So Venus retrograde is essentially a time when Venus appears to be moving backward in the sky from our perspective, here on Earth.
Okay.
Astrologically, this is associated with reevaluating things related to love, relationships,
Got it.
beauty, and finances.
Okay. So a time for reflection
Yes,
and maybe some course correction.
exactly. Now, Aries is a fire sign known for its impulsiveness,
Mm-hmm.
passion, and boldness. Pisces, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is a water sign known for its dreaminess, sensitivity, and tendency toward escapism.
So we've got this push and pull between action and introspection.
Yes,
Passion and illusion.
precisely.
Oh.
Lorenzo calls the period when Venus is retrograde in Aries.
Okay.
From March 2nd to 27th,
Yeah.
2025.
Okay.
The reckless love phase.
Reckless love. Okay, that already sounds a bit ominous.
Mhm.
What exactly does Lorenzo predict will happen during this phase?
He warns about toxic exes returning,
Oh, no.
old relationship patterns resurfacing,
Right.
and people making impulsive decisions they might later regret.
So not a great time to jump into a new relationship.
Probably not.
Or get back together with an ex.
Lorenzo specifically warns about mistaking desire for destiny
Right.
and highlights the potential for power struggles in relationships.
Oh, wow.
He also cautions against impatience in both love and finances during this time.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster if you're not careful.
It can be.
Oh, boy.
Then
Yeah.
from March 28th to April 6th, 2025,
Mm-hmm.
Venus retrogrades back into Pisces,
Okay.
which Lorenzo calls the illusion of love phase.
Illusion of love. So
Yeah.
things get even murkier.
You could say that.
Oh, my gosh.
Lorenzo says that as Venus shifts into Pisces,
Right?
things get blurry with heightened emotional sensitivity
Yeah.
and a greater risk of romantic delusion.
So it's like everyone's walking around with rose-colored glasses on.
That's one way to put it.
Oh, no.
Lorenzo warns about unrealistic fantasies, the tendency to romanticize past relationships,
Yeah.
and the potential for financial deception during this phase.
Wow. So it's not just our love lives that are in the danger zone,
Right?
but our wallets, too.
Exactly.
Gosh.
And then to really drive his point home,
Yeah.
Lorenzo has a section he calls Venus Retrograde Impact, the no BS breakdown.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
All right.
What's Lorenzo's bottom line when it comes to the impact of this Venus retrograde?
He says it's going to force us to confront some hard truths
Mm-hmm.
about our relationships, our self-worth, and our financial habits.
It's a time for some serious soul-searching.
You could say that Lorenzo believes that this retrograde will expose a lack of self-worth
Mm-hmm.
in relationships, potentially leading to breakups that reveal underlying issues.
So it's not necessarily that Venus retrograde causes breakups,
Right.
but rather that it brings pre-existing problems to the surface.
That's how Lorenzo sees it.
God.
He believes that relationships on shaky ground will
Yeah.
either transform or fall apart completely during this time,
Wow.
highlighting the retrograde as a revealer,
Oh.
not a destroyer.
Okay, I'm starting to see why Lorenzo has such a devoted following. He's not afraid to dive into the difficult stuff.
He's not.
And speaking of difficult stuff,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about exes.
Okay.
Lorenzo has a whole section dedicated to the return of exes during Venus retrograde,
Right.
aptly titled Rekindled Love, Trap or True Connection.
It's definitely a hot topic.
Right?
A lot of people wonder if the return of an ex during Venus retrograde
Yeah.
is a sign to give things another try.
And what does Lorenzo say about that?
He's pretty clear. Nostalgia is not love. He warns against mistaking old wounds for genuine connection and points out that the return of an ex during this time could simply be a case of manipulation
Yep.
or unresolved baggage resurfacing.
Ouch, that's a tough pill to swallow
It is.
for anyone hoping for a second chance romance.
But Lorenzo's whole approach is about brutal honesty.
Right.
He'd rather people be prepared for the potential pitfalls and blindly walk into a situation that could cause more heartache.
I appreciate that. Okay, so we've covered love and relationships. But what about finances?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't Venus rule over money matters as well?
It does.
Okay.
And Lorenzo has a whole section called Financial Instability, Avoiding Regrettable Decisions, where he warns about the financial risks associated with this Venus retrograde.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right.
What kind of financial trouble are we talking about?
Lorenzo says that Venus retrograde increases the risk of impulse spending, regretful luxury purchases, and bad investments.
So basically, hide your credit cards and avoid making any major financial decisions.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Got it.
Lorenzo specifically warns against major financial decisions, starting new business ventures, and even being excessively generous during this time.
All right, so far this all sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
But also very general. Does Lorenzo get into how this Venus retrograde might affect
Yes, he does.
different zodiac signs specifically?
In fact, he has a whole section dedicated to zodiac sign breakdown, personalized impacts, where he explains how Venus retrograde's impact will vary based on your zodiac sign and the houses it transits in your birth chart.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, it gets specific.
I'm dying to know how this cosmic shakeup might affect me and everyone I know.
Well, get ready to take some notes because Lorenzo has predictions for each zodiac sign.
Okay.
And trust me, they're just as detailed and insightful as everything else he's shared so far.
All right, listeners.
Buckle up.
Grab a pen and paper because we're about to dive into Lorenzo's sign-by-sign breakdown.
Yes.
Of how this Venus retrograde might affect you personally.
Okay.
All right, so let's dive into Lorenzo's sign-by-sign breakdown of this Venus retrograde.
Okay.
I'm curious to see how the reckless love and illusion of love phases manifest for each sign.
Me too. And remember, as Lorenzo explains, the specific impact of Venus retrograde depends on which houses it transits in your birth chart.
Right. So listeners, if you know your birth chart, this is where things get extra personal.
Yeah.
And if you don't, this is a great opportunity to learn more about it.
Absolutely.
So let's start with Aries.
Okay.
Lorenzo explains that during the reckless love phase, with Venus retrograde in their first house of self-identity, Aries individuals might feel a bit less confident than usual. They might question their appearance or feel disconnected from their usual bold energy.
So even the usually confident Aries could be feeling a little shaky during this time.
Exactly. Lorenzo warns against making any impulsive decisions about appearance or relationships during this phase.
Good advice.
It's like he's saying, Aries, take a deep breath and wait this one out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Then Lorenzo explains things get a bit deeper.
Okay.
As Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Aries' 12th house of the subconscious and endings. He says buried emotions could resurface during this illusion of love phase.
Oh.
Things like old love wounds, past regrets, and hidden fears.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, Lorenzo warns that a secret love affair or unfinished business with an ex might return during this phase.
Ooh, secret love affairs. Okay, this is getting juicy.
Yeah.
What about Taurus?
Okay.
What does Lorenzo predict for them?
Well, for Taurus, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 12th house of isolation and reflection might bring up feelings of loneliness and insecurity in relationships.
Oh, that's rough.
Lorenzo even suggests that some Tauruses might start to question whether their partners truly care.
I can imagine that being a really difficult time for Taurus.
Yeah.
Who generally values security and stability in relationships.
Right. And to make matters worse, Lorenzo says unresolved romantic issues from the past could resurface, haunting their dreams and thoughts.
So it's a double whammy of relationship anxiety for Taurus during this phase.
Very much.
But then things shift as Venus retrogrades out back into Pisces and moves into Taurus's 11th house of friendships and future goals.
Okay, so does it get any better for Taurus during this illusion of love phase?
Well, according to Lorenzo, a friendship could turn romantic during this time.
Interesting.
But, and this is a big but, he warns Taurus to question whether it's real or just the confusing energy of Venus retrograde playing tricks on their heart.
Oh, interesting.
So that friend you've always had a crush on suddenly starts acting differently. But Lorenzo's saying, don't get swept away too quickly.
Exactly.
He also mentions that ex-friends or past lovers might reappear in Taurus's life during this phase, which could further complicate things.
So Taurus needs to be extra discerning about who they let back into their life during this time.
Absolutely.
Wow, okay.
Now, let's move on to Gemini.
Okay.
Lorenzo says that during the reckless love phase,
with Venus retrograde in their 11th house of social circles and networking, Geminis might experience some drama or complications in their friendships.
oh, I can see that happening.
Geminis are such social butterflies.
Right.
This could be a real challenge for them.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Lorenzo says there's a possibility of them reconnecting with an old lover through social media.
So those late-night Instagram scrolls might lead to trouble for Gemini.
Potentially.
Yikes.
He also mentions that Geminis might find themselves rethinking their vision for love.
Okay.
And questioning whether their current relationships align with their dreams for the future. Lots to think about for Gemini during this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Then what happens as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into their 10th house of career and reputation?
Okay.
Well, Lorenzo says the focus shifts to their professional life during this illusion of love phase.
Got it.
He warns Gemini to be on the lookout for office romances or workplace drama.
Ooh. Office politics and romance.
He even suggests that someone might try to mix love and business in a way that doesn't benefit Gemini.
That's a volatile mix.
Definitely.
Oh, boy.
And Lorenzo adds that exes could reappear in Gemini's professional world,
Oh, wow.
even mentioning a LinkedIn message from an ex as a possibility.
Okay, I'm getting the sense that this retrograde is going to bring up a lot of past relationship stuff for everyone.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Lorenzo also cautions Geminis to be mindful of their public image during this phase and to avoid any scandals, both romantic and financial.
So, Gemini, stay focused and keep it professional.
Yes.
Now, what about Cancer?
All right.
What does Lorenzo have in store for them?
For Cancer, the reckless love phase begins with Venus retrograde in their 10th house of career and status. Lorenzo says there's a chance a past workplace romance or scandal could resurface.
Oh, wow. Talk about awkward.
Right.
Oh, my gosh.
He also suggests that Cancers might feel unappreciated in their jobs or relationships and encourages them to reevaluate how their relationships are impacting their overall success and sense of fulfillment.
So it's a time for Cancer to step back and assess whether their career and relationships are truly supporting them.
Exactly. Then, when Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Cancer's 9th house of beliefs and travel, Lorenzo says the focus shifts to their personal belief systems and desire for expansion.
Okay, so how does that play out during this illusion of love phase?
Well, Lorenzo predicts that a long-distance ex or someone from a different culture could reappear in Cancer's life.
So maybe an old flame from that study abroad program reaches out?
Maybe.
Yeah.
He also cautions Cancers to be mindful of how love distractions might impact their plans for travel, education, or spiritual growth.
So it's like, don't let a blast from the past derail your current plans.
Exactly. Lorenzo's advice for Cancer during this time is to stay focused on their goals and not let relationship confusion sidetrack them.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
Now, what about Leo?
Okay.
What does Lorenzo predict for the lions of the Zodiac?
For Leo, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 9th house of travel and expansion could bring a reality check when it comes to romantic illusions about travel, education, or adventure.
So maybe that dream trip to Bali with your partner doesn't turn out as magical as you'd hoped.
Perhaps.
Oh, no.
Lorenzo also says that ex-lovers from foreign places, where different backgrounds may return, tempting Leos to revisit the past.
Okay, so maybe that hot Italian you met on vacation sends you a flirty DM?
It's possible.
Yeah.
But Lorenzo cautions Leos to be very careful about long-distance relationships during this time, questioning whether they're based in reality or just a fantasy.
Good advice. Long distance is hard enough as it is without adding Venus retrograde into the mix.
Right. Then things get even more intense when Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Leo's 8th house of intimacy and shared resources.
Okay.
During this illusion of love phase.
Okay, so what kind of intensity are we talking about?
Lorenzo says that sexual and emotional intensity will rise for Leos.
Ooh, steamy.
But so will trust issues.
But maybe with a side of suspicion.
Exactly.
Wow.
He warns that secrets in relationships may be exposed during this phase.
Oh, wow.
And cautions Leos to avoid making any joint financial investments or loans with a partner.
So it's like, enjoy the passion, but keep your guard up and don't sign any contracts with your heart.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Lorenzo's ultimate advice for Leo during this phase is to avoid getting manipulated into rekindling a toxic, passionate relationship.
Noted.
Okay.
What about Virgo?
All right.
What does Lorenzo's forecast have in store for them?
For Virgo, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 8th house of shared resources and intimacy could bring complications around money matters in relationships.
Uh-oh. Arguments about finances are never fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Lorenzo also says that emotional baggage and old wounds could resurface, leading to tension and arguments, and to make things even more interesting.
Okay.
He throws in the possibility of a past sexual connection reappearing.
Ooh, interesting.
Which he describes as tempting, but ultimately unstable.
So Virgos need to resist temptation and be extra mindful of their boundaries during this time.
It seems that way.
Okay.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Virgo's 7th house of relationships and commitments, Lorenzo says it's time for a major relationship review.
Ooh, okay. What does that entail?
He says that Virgos will be forced to take a hard look at their partnerships and honestly assess whether they're based on real love or just comfort and familiarity.
I think a lot of people in long-term relationships could benefit from that kind of reflection.
Absolutely. And to add another layer of complexity, Lorenzo says that exes may return during this illusion of love phase, testing Virgo's emotional growth and commitment to their current partner.
So maybe that ex who always said you were the one that got away suddenly slides back into your DMs.
Maybe.
Wow.
But Lorenzo's advice for Virgo during this time is to avoid making any major relationship or financial decisions tied to love, as things might not be what they seem.
Good advice. Don't rush into anything.
Right.
Okay.
What about Libra?
Okay.
What does Lorenzo have to say about how this Venus retrograde might affect them? For Libra, the reckless love phase begins with Venus retrograde in their 7th house of partnerships and marriage.
Okay.
Lorenzo warns that their serious relationships will go through a reality check during this time.
So all those rose-colored glasses are coming off?
That's how Lorenzo sees it. He says that exes or unresolved love drama might return, testing Libras and their commitment to their current partners.
Okay, so a lot of potential for relationship drama for Libra.
It seems that way. He even specifically advises Libras to wait until after Venus goes direct before making any decisions about commitment.
Don't propose during Venus retrograde. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Libra's 6th house of daily life and health, Lorenzo predicts a shift in focus.
Okay, what's the focus during this illusion of love phase for Libra?
Lorenzo says that self-care and emotional healing will become priorities for Libras.
Okay.
He also mentions that workplace romance issues could arise and that stress related to love might affect their health or daily routines.
So Libras should prioritize their well-being and avoid getting caught up in any office romances.
Exactly.
Got it.
His overall advice for Libra during this Venus retrograde is to focus on themselves and their well-being, as their relationships will ultimately benefit from a healthier, more balanced them.
That makes a lot of sense. What about Scorpio?
Okay.
What kind of intense cosmic drama does Lorenzo have in store for them?
Well, for Scorpio, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 6th house of health and work might create some challenges when it comes to balancing love and work.
So maybe don't start dating your coworker during this Venus retrograde.
Probably a good idea.
Okay.
He also encourages Scorpios to reevaluate their daily routines and prioritize their self-worth, making sure they're not overworking themselves or neglecting their own needs.
Taking care of yourself is so important.
Absolutely.
Especially during a potentially chaotic time like Venus retrograde.
Right.
Yeah.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Scorpio's 5th house of romance and pleasure, things get a bit more exciting.
Ooh, exciting in what way?
Lorenzo says that old lovers, flings, or even creative inspirations could resurface, tempting Scorpios to revisit the past.
Ooh, the return of a passionate fling. That sounds very Scorpio.
It does.
Right.
But of course, Lorenzo throws in a little word of caution, warning Scorpios to be careful about casual flings turning messy or reigniting old dramas.
So it's like, have fun, but be mindful of the potential consequences.
Exactly. He also encourages Scorpios to enjoy any romantic opportunities that come their way, but to avoid taking things too seriously until Venus moves forward.
Got it. Enjoy the ride, but don't get too attached.
Right.
What about Sagittarius?
All right.
What does Lorenzo have in store for the adventurous archers?
For Sagittarius, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 5th house of fun and romance could bring back some blasts from the past in the form of former flings.
Oh, those Sagittarians and their love of a good adventure. But is Lorenzo saying these rekindled romances are a good idea?
Not necessarily. He cautions Sagittarians to avoid jumping into any new relationships during this time, as the energy of Venus retrograde could cloud their judgment.
So pump the brakes on any whirlwind romances.
Exactly.
Right.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Sagittarius's 4th house of home and family, Lorenzo predicts a shift in focus during this illusion of love phase.
What's the focus for Sagittarius during this time?
Lorenzo says that emotional wounds from childhood or family relationships might resurface.
Oh, wow.
Requiring Sagittarius to confront some potentially painful memories or patterns.
It sounds like a time for some deep inner healing.
It does.
Yeah.
Lorenzo's advice for Sagittarius during this Venus retrograde is to be mindful of their past and avoid repeating old patterns in their current relationships.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Capricorn.
All right.
What does Lorenzo's forecast say about how this Venus retrograde might affect them?
Well, for Capricorn, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 4th house of home and family could bring up some deep questions about long-term relationship stability.
So maybe Capricorns in serious relationships will be evaluating whether they're truly happy and whether their relationship is aligned with their long-term goals.
That's a possible interpretation. Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Capricorn's 3rd house of communication, Lorenzo predicts a simpler dynamic. Exes might slide into their DMs.
Oh, interesting. It seems like a lot of signs might hear from exes during this retrograde.
Yeah.
But Capricorns in particular need to be careful about how they respond.
Exactly. Lorenzo's advice for Capricorn: think before you text back.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
What about Aquarius?
What
does Lorenzo predict for them?
For Aquarius, the reckless love phase with Venus retrograde in their 3rd house of communication is also likely to involve messages from past lovers.
So maybe an ex reaches out to apologize or try to rekindle things. What's Lorenzo's advice for Aquarius in that situation?
He doesn't specifically say, but given his warnings to other signs, I'd imagine he'd encourage Aquarians to be cautious and not rush into anything.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into Aquarius's 2nd house of money and values, Lorenzo's focus shifts to finances.
He advises Aquarians to exercise financial caution during this illusion of love phase, suggesting that it's not a good time for big purchases or investments.
Don't go on any shopping sprees during this time.
Right.
Got it.
He doesn't elaborate on what kind of financial challenges Aquarians might face.
Right.
His general advice is to wait until after Venus goes direct before making any major financial or romantic moves.
Makes sense. It seems like this is a good rule of thumb for everyone during Venus retrograde.
Right.
What about Pisces?
Okay.
What does Lorenzo have to say about how this transit might affect them?
For Pisces, the reckless love phase begins with Venus retrograde in their 2nd house of self-worth and money, which Lorenzo suggests could lead to their confidence wavering in these areas.
So Pisces might be feeling a bit more insecure than usual about their finances and their value in relationships.
That's what Lorenzo suggests.
Okay.
Then, as Venus retrogrades back into Pisces and moves into their 1st house of identity, he predicts a major self-image reevaluation during this illusion of love phase.
So this Venus retrograde is a time for Pisces to go deep within themselves and really examine their beliefs about love, money, and their own self-worth.
That's a great way to sum it up.
Wow.
And Lorenzo's final piece of advice for Pisces: Don't let Venus retrograde shake your self-worth.
Great advice.
Yeah.
This has been a fascinating look at Lorenzo's sign-by-sign predictions.
It has.
And I think it's important to remember that even though Lorenzo's predictions can be intense, he's ultimately trying to help us navigate this potentially challenging time with awareness and grace.
Absolutely. And I think he's also reminding us that astrology is a tool for self-discovery. It's not about predicting the future with certainty, but rather about understanding ourselves and the energies at play so we can make more conscious choices.
Okay, so we've explored how this Venus retrograde might manifest for each sign, but Lorenzo doesn't stop there. He offers some pretty stark warnings about the common pitfalls people face during this astrological transit.
Right. He has a whole section titled The Shocking Truth About Venus Retrograde, where he doesn't mince words.
Lorenzo's not known for sugarcoating things.
Definitely not.
So what are some of the shocking truths he reveals?
Well, he starts by saying, and I quote, "Most people will completely mess up during Venus retrograde."
Ouch. But honestly, that's probably true.
It probably is.
What kind of messing up are we talking about?
Lorenzo gives a few examples. He says, people might text their ex thinking it's fate when it's really just unresolved emotional baggage.
Right.
Or they might quit their job impulsively, believing a better opportunity is right around the corner, when in reality, Venus is distorting their judgment.
That definitely sounds like some reckless Aries energy, especially during that reckless love phase.
Right. And here's the one that I think will resonate with a lot of listeners.
Okay.
Lorenzo says people might throw away a good relationship, convinced that something better is out there, only to regret it when the retrograde ends.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's like the illusion of love phase in Pisces, where people are prone to fantasy and idealization, takes over and clouds their judgment.
Exactly. But here's the good news.
Okay.
Lorenzo believes that by understanding the energies at play during this Venus retrograde, we can avoid making those same mistakes.
So knowledge is power, even when it comes to astrology.
Absolutely. Lorenzo tells us that we now understand Venus retrograde is a trap. That what feels urgent now might not feel right later, and that illusions in love and money are at an all-time high. He believes this understanding makes us, the listeners, one of the few people who can avoid disaster and come out stronger.
I love that it's like he's giving us a cosmic heads up. Empowering us to make wiser choices.
He is.
And to help us navigate this time, he gives us the final rule for surviving Venus retrograde. Okay, what's the rule? Give it to me straight.
It's actually pretty simple. If something or someone comes back, don't act on it until Venus goes direct. If a relationship feels unstable, wait before making any permanent decisions.
Got it.
And if you're tempted to spend big money or make a career move, pause first.
So basically, it's all about slowing down, taking a breath, and not letting our emotions dictate our actions.
Exactly. Lorenzo reminds us that Venus retrograde isn't here to ruin our lives. It's here to test us. He believes that if we stay aware, don't react emotionally, and trust the process, we'll be ahead of 99% of people who fall into the retrograde trap.
I love that perspective. It's not about fearing Venus retrograde. It's about using this time for reflection, growth, and making conscious choices.
Perfectly said. And even though Lorenzo can be a bit blunt in his delivery, I think his message is ultimately one of hope and empowerment.
Absolutely.
He's not trying to scare us. He's trying to wake us up.
It's like he's saying, hey, this might be a challenging time, but you have the power to navigate it wisely and come out the other side even stronger.
Exactly.
Well, I think Lorenzo has given us plenty to think about.
He has.
This Venus retrograde is shaping up to be a wild ride.
It is.
But I feel much more prepared to navigate it with intention and awareness.
Me too. And listeners, remember, as Lorenzo emphasizes, you have the knowledge now. Use it wisely.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into Lorenzo's astrological forecast for Venus retrograde in 2025. We hope you found this exploration insightful and empowering. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious, and keep looking up at the stars.
And remember, don't let Venus retrograde shake your self-worth.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.